Unlimited overcharge? Could it be true? Is he lying? In order, no and yes. So you cannot, for obvious game-breaking reasons, get infinite overcharge forever, but you can get it for at least 45 seconds. And that is thanks wholly to 3 separate talents, one of which is the weapon talent Future Perfection, the backpack talent Energize, and the BTSU Data Glove talent Transference Overclock. So what you're looking at here is a glimpse into my madness, and by that I mean the full overcharge cycle for the 3 aforementioned talents. So one thing that this chart assumes, which is incorrect, is that you are activating these talents one after the other with no time in between. But if you were able to do that, and that's a big if, obviously, here's what the most efficient cycle would look like, during which you could activate overcharge 13 times for a total of 195 seconds of uptime and 165 seconds of downtime. But more realistically, let's throw that away, because this represents a more realistic view of what you're going to be doing. So when the encounter starts off, you're going to try and activate Energize. That's going to give you 15 seconds of overcharge. And as you can see there, you're going to have to take damage to activate Energize. So you do a little pop out of cover, take damage, pop back into cover, get that overcharge started. It's going to give you 15 seconds of it. As you can see, it ends there. Then what you're going to do, switch to Mechanical Animal. Activate Future Perfection. Now you've got overcharge again. Oh, would you look at that? Energize cooldown is over, so we're just going to activate it again. And here's the enemy leader. We could definitely use some more overcharge. So let's go ahead and throw that hive out there, destroy it, and get 15 seconds of overcharge. So as you can see there, even when we're trying to chain overcharge activations together, there's going to be some time in between. And that's really the more relevant use case here for this build. This build isn't really about getting 45 seconds of uninterrupted overcharge. It's a fun thumbnail. It's a great attention grabber to say it's unlimited overcharge. Really what it is it's 3 discrete ways to activate overcharge on one build. Because it doesn't matter if you have overcharge active when there are no enemies. It matters whether or not you can activate overcharge when you need to use it the most. So that's why I'm making this video. That's why I had a lot of fun with this build, because with those 3 options, you're very rarely in a situation where you can't activate overcharge when you need it most. So for the specialization, we've gone with Technician, primarily for the amped +1 skill tier. For our primary weapon, we have Test Subject, primarily for the perfectly in sync talent. For our secondary weapon, we have the Mechanical Animal with the aforementioned Future Perfection talent. And then for our sidearm, we have the Orbit with the Perfect Finisher talent to get us some crit hit chance and critical hit damage when we get to it. But ideally, you're just going to be swapping between the Test Subject and Mechanical Animal for the majority of the time. Starting off with the mask, we have our first of 3 pieces of Empress International with armor regen and skill damage in the attribute slots and protection from elites in the mod slot. The skill damage here is highly recommended. The armor regen and protection from elites are much more preferential. These are slots you could certainly play around with. One obvious variation would be skill haste as the secondary attribute, but I will say, given how often the skills are overcharged, skill haste honestly felt like a little bit of a waste. But you may feel differently. That is certainly something you could add. For our backpack, we have our 1 piece of Wyvern Wear for plus 10% skill damage, and you'll also see skill damage, armor regen, and protection from elites in our attribute and mod slot. And very crucially, for the talent, we have Energize. For our chest piece, we have the Everyday Carrier. The Bellstone Armory 1% armor regen isn't bad, but the real reason we have this chest piece on is for the Perfectly Efficient talent, which gives us a 75% chance not to to consume an armor kit, and that paired with the energized talent on the backpack is one of the primary ways that we're going to be activating overcharge. And then for the gloves, we have the BTSU data gloves, and our third way of activating overcharge with the transference overclock talent, which does require a hive to activate. And then for our holster and our knee pads, we have the second and third pieces of Empress International, both also with skill damage and armor regen in the attribute slots. Moving into our skills, I have the Stinger Hive on there. As mentioned previously, the Transference Overclock talent requires a hive to be activated, and for my preferences, I went with the Offensive Hive, but your mileage may vary. If you're going for a different setup, a different hive could certainly work, but if you're going for an offensive output skill build, the Stinger Hive is my recommendation. For the second skill, I personally went with the Assault Turret, primarily for its skill duration and damage output. With my playstyle of hunker down and hide in a corner, between the Stinger Hive and the Assault Turret, I've created quite a defensible position for myself. But I do want to note the second skill in particular here is one you can absolutely play around with. Obviously, the first slot is reserved for a hive of some sort, but the second slot here is entirely up to you. Again, I went with the Assault Turret because it plays well with my personal playstyle. You may feel very differently. You could go with other offensive choices, such as the Striker Drone or maybe the Cluster Mines. Really, any of the Seeker Mine variants would work here. It's just that, again, personally, after I played around with this build, the Assault Turret is what I ended up with. That being said, specifically for this build, I would love to hear in the comments what you guys use for your second skill. I'm curious how different playstyles mesh with different second skills. So try this one for yourself. Feel free to vary it up. Let me know what you think. Drop a like if you like this video, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more like this. Thanks for watching.